Hi guys, Rachel here. I hope you're all well. So today I want to take a look at my favorite negative cards in the Thoth deck because I feel like this is a topic that comes up frequently in the videos that I make. So I have a couple, 2-3 Thoth decks sitting here because the premise of it is, for the most part, aesthetic. It's visual. So I'm not, in other words, going to discuss all of the cards with primarily negative connotations. No, I'm going to be highlighting a few of my favorite negative cards. The cards that I find visually stunning, despite their negative connotations. Yeah. So let's just get into it, and maybe this will make sense as we go along. So here's probably the most obvious one. The Nine of Swords, cruelty. I mean, it probably doesn't get much more negative than this, right? I mean, well, the 10 is pretty bad, but the 10 is not in this video because it's personally not a card that speaks to me visually. There's just something about this that I find gorgeous. I mean, it's meant to be quite menacing. I mean, look at these bloody swords. They're dripping blood and poison, and the background here, these geometric shapes are meant to represent like chaos and confusion. It's like here in the 9, we're so far removed from the ace, you know, of like pure intellect, that of course it would degenerate into pure cruelty and hopelessness, because the mind is our worst enemy. It's Mars and Gemini. Sorry, I'm all tongue-tied for some reason. It's the Ruach consuming itself over analysis, and it just leaves you with this sense of hopelessness and nightmares and what have you. I'm sure you know what this card means, but yeah, how can we put a positive spin on it? But for me personally, if I can just tell myself that it's my mind, if my mind is accosting me, that really helps. So let's take a look here at this card from the box B, I believe it is. I just love the differences in the printing. Like here we have more of a green going on in the background. This is the AGM 1986. And this is the 1983 greenie. But yeah, does anyone else find this beautiful? Yeah. So let's move on here. What do I have next? Yeah, of course. 5 of Cups. Everybody, I think by now, they know that I have a personal relationship with the 5 of Cups, and visually it is one of my favorite cards. Not just here, but in particular, where is it? The Morgan Greer, this 5 of Cups here. It's Mars and Scorpio. I think of it as card of disenchantment. This was my stalker card years and years ago. I got this card like every day. And it very much, for me, encapsulated my, I don't want to say my life, but my relationship, my marriage. I was very homesick. And, you know, I had a roof over my head and everything. I had my daughter, but at the end of the day, or whenever I found time for myself, I would sit with my cards, and when I would draw this, it, in a sense, it was comforting, because it was sort of like the deck was like, I get you, I understand you, like, it's okay to admit that you're feeling this way. So to this day, I get, you know, 5 of Cups here, and I think that this is visually stunning. I probably would find it beautiful, even despite my previous relationship to it. But it's just a very special card to me. How can I describe? You know what? I have a drawing that I did. Maybe I'll just, you know what? Maybe I'll just show it to you. Hang on a second. Okay, so this is kind of embarrassing, but yeah, I did this self-portrait like years and years ago, and it was just very heavily tarot inspired. Primarily this guy here, the 5 of Cups. You can totally see it. I can't get the whole thing in here, but you can totally see it here. Like, this was this self-portrait that was meant to be sort of like, it was supposed to sort of resemble like maybe like an illuminated page. But yeah, it was just it was all about loneliness, homesickness, and maybe a sense of regret. I missed my friends, but also self-discovery. So anyway, all that sort of comes to mind with this card. It also makes me think of a time where, despite the sadness, it was a creative time for me. As usually, I get hyper creative when I'm upset about something. But anyway, so the 5 of Cups. The interesting thing about this card is, one connotation is that it's the fulfillment of these unconscious negative wishes, or unconsciously hoping that something isn't going to go as planned. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you were unconsciously pushing someone away? Maybe a friend or a lover, even though on the surface there's somebody that you want to be around, yet there's something in the back of your mind, your unconscious, or, you know, that's telling you like, this isn't right. I've experienced that, where it was a long time ago, I sort of like made a buffoon of myself, to sort of push someone away, and it worked. And there was a mourning period of, you know, loss of that person, and yet, I don't know, it just made sense. So these are some of the things that I think of when looking at these cards. But positive aspects are a reminder not to get too caught up in your emotions. Don't let them rule you. The self-indulgent sort of drama. It's also a reminder to, you know, don't play the victim, be self-aware. And luxury is fleeting. So try and be more resourceful. You find that actually you have all you need. I don't know. So I love the Five of Cups. Let's see, are there any other fives I can show you here? So yeah, Five of Cups. Again, despite the pain, the byproduct of epiphany, new perceptions, the disenchantment process leads to solidity, a better life. Speaking of which, the moon, I don't know why this is a segue into the moon, but as Crowley says, she is the poison darkness, which is the condition of the rebirth of light. It's the dark night of the soul. I'm sure you've heard that before. Yet, as Crowley says, the best of us exclaim, "How splendid is the adventure." I love that. I hear music when I think of this card. I do associate it with madness, yes, but the sort of madness which yields fruitful creative productivity, which I definitely delved into a lot more when I was younger. Anyway, a little bit of a digression there. So let's see here. We have the scarab, which represents resurrection, and these blue mountains here are supposed to be the thighs of Nut, the sky goddess, who gives birth to the sun every morning. And of course, we have the menstrual blood, which, on a personal note, I often associate this as a simple reminder that my special time is coming. But yeah, with the moon, it's the brink of important change, which I just love. This was, again, another one of the first cards that I resonated with. Here's the moon from the Morgan Greer, which was my first deck. And I used to lay out cards on my art table. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what I was doing is I was sort of creating an altar without really realizing it. But I was trying to draw inspiration from cards. They weren't anything that I had drawn from a reading. They were simply cards that inspired me or gave me a vibe to create. So yeah, I love this card. There's not much more I can say about it. The Seven of Discs. This is just beautiful. Just visually beautiful. Saturn and Taurus. The discs are arranged in the formation of the geomantic figure Rubeus, which is the illest of omens. Like, I don't really know anything about geomancy, but there it is. In the background here, this is supposed to represent like spoiled vegetation, and the coins are meant to represent bad money. So we have, hard work yielding little gain. However, how I like to think of it as, I read somewhere, the price of knowledge is toil. And yes, absolutely. It's often taken to mean work, like I said, hard work yielding little gain, yet it's work from the heart, undertaken for the love of it, without much expectation of material gain. And this brings to mind for me my love of reading and studying. I do consider it work. I sometimes stress myself out over my workload of reading, because I don't just read for fun. I'm reading to gain knowledge, to understand, or I don't expect to to have all the answers, but it's work for me. It's serious work. And I remembered years ago, a friend asked me, he was not a reader, So, you know, he asked me, like, what do you do it for? Like, why do you read? You're not getting paid for it. And, you know, sometimes on a bad day, I do think about what I'm doing, like the projects that I engage in. And I think, what is all this for? But yeah, it's totally worth it. You don't have to explain it to anybody else. So let's take a look at some of these other Thoth cards here. Quite different. These two are much darker than this one here. I didn't bring out all of my Thoth decks. I think this is probably the loveliest, but I do love how dark this is. All right, let's move on. I'm trying not to make this too lengthy here. All right, now we have the Three of Swords. Oh my God. I hope you guys can see the cards. The beautiful Three of Swords. I just think this is gorgeous. Look at these like storm clouds here. And penetrating the rose. Okay, so again, as Crowley says, beautiful, the womb of chaos, intense lurking passion to create, but its children are monsters. So does this signify the dark aspects of creativity, which I just spoke of regarding the moon? Yeah, I love these storm clouds here in the background, as I was saying. It's Binah, ruler of air. Here she represents the darkness of the great sea. Or maybe you've heard of like the morning of Isis. But it's universal sorrow, which I remember reading that years ago when I was first reading the book of Thoth, and it really struck a chord with me. Universal sorrow and the quality of melancholy. Because yes, I do agree that melancholy has a quality. It's melancholy that leads to enlightenment. It's weltzchmerz, if I'm pronouncing that right. It's a German word. Weltzchmerz, it's a literary term, which I've been plagued with since early childhood. It's translated as meaning world pain. Someone defined it, I don't remember who, as homesickness for a place you have never seen, which just fits this card to a T. It's like the feeling that our reality can never live up to our expectations, like the dream world in our minds, which again, like I said, this weltzchmerz is something that was sort of like an imaginary friend for me, like all of my life. I remember being really little and just playing with my toys. Or I remember once I was standing by a shelf in our house that I grew up in. I used to just sort of like wander around the house and look at things and wonder what they were for, or why my mom or dad had this or that book. I don't know how to describe it, but I just remembered all of a sudden, for no particular reason, I don't even know why I remember this, but just all of a sudden being overtaken with this craving, this insatiable craving for I don't know what, but all I can describe it is as this weltzchmerz, you know? Yeah. So let's take a look at some of these cards here. Oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful card. I am a fan of like the traditional, let's see, here it is. The traditional Rider-Waite Three of Swords. I just love it. I don't know what it is. I have a shirt with this embroidered on it. I think I mentioned it in another video. My daughter, when I bought it, she's like, how emo, mom, you know? Yeah, I don't know, it's visceral for me. And I love the rain too. So, and I love hearts. I've always loved hearts. I don't know what it is, but beautiful, beautiful. One of the loveliest cards. Okay, so let's move on. 10 of Wands. So, again, sort of like in the 5 of Cups, visually, it's like this orange contrasted against this blue that I think is what I really love, especially in the greenies here. The orange looks so pretty against the green. You know, it's Saturn and Sagittarius. It's force, which has lost its way. It cares nothing beyond its purpose. Its purpose is lust of result. It's energy uncontrolled. You can think of it as like power struggles. I still tend to think of the guy with all the sticks in the Rider-Waite. And I do tend to put too much on my plate. So you have to ask yourself, like, what is the purpose behind it? Is it simply lust of results? You know, recognize your limits. So again, I just think it's really pretty. It's not one of my favorite cards, but I think visually it's just very pretty. 8 of Cups. Okay. This was probably the first card from the Thoth deck that I found myself attracted to. It was years ago, and don't remember where I saw it, but I was just like, wow, what a beautiful deck. You know, I'd seen the Thoth before, but I hadn't really looked at it, or I'd seen it without really seeing it. You know what I mean? But this, I think it's this beautiful copper, these copper cups contrasted against these beautiful dark storm clouds. So, yeah, Saturn and Pisces. So here, the water here, it's no longer this sea, this beautiful sea that we'd seen in the earlier cup cards, but pools filled with stagnant water. And these lotus flowers are drooping from lack of nourishment. It's supposed to be quite grim, but I see a storm on the horizon. So again, for me, the brink of change, which I just find so alluring. I've always loved storms. So, you know, the 8 of Cups here, the Morgan Greer. Love this depiction. It's important to leave behind what no longer serves us, you know, like spiritual journey. Do not cling to what's decayed, what no longer serves us. Let's take a look. Wow, I really hope I'm getting these all in the camera. I'm not really looking at it. Look how like illuminated this is here. I just love all 3. All right, the Tower. So you guys have probably heard me say before, the Tower is one of my favorite cards. I have a little keychain on my purse with the Tower. It's, here, speaking of the Morgan Greer again, one of the very first cards, if not the first card, that I fell in love with. And I tend not to be afraid when I draw it in a reading. It excites me. And I will say, I do think I have a Mars thing going on, which, you know, it could be a good or bad thing. I don't know. But I simply, if I were to choose like one keyword for it, it would be change, which we can't avoid change. We have to embrace it, and change is usually good. So to give you another Crowley quote, I love this. Break down the fortress of thine individual self, that thy truth may spring free from the ruins. Love it. So yeah, visually here we have this shining eye of Shiva. It represents destruction. And the dove here represents new hope. So there's some positivity for you. Yeah, I think of it as like epiphany, you know, the expulsion of old beliefs which limited us in our growth. So, you know, liberation. Yeah. Anyway. Six of Swords. Okay, so this is not a negative card. It's not as negative as some of the other cards that I've shown you. Maybe it seems a little bit more dire in the Rider-Waite depiction. It's not a negative card, but I think maybe it's underappreciated. Maybe it's not underappreciated, but I'm just going to go with that. Because for me, it's one of the most positive cards. Because, as Crowley said, it's this balance of moral and mental faculties, hardly won and almost impossible to hold in an ever-changing world. And yes, simply put, if I were to choose like one keyword, it would be objectivity. Objectivity, which can really help us through, hardships. Like I talked about this in a video, this Six of Swords here in the Tarot Vampires. This was the card from this deck here that finally made the meaning of this card click for me, truly. I was going through some hard times, and I remembered I was in this car at night, and I was just going through this situation, just like these relationships with people. It was just this stifling sort of situation, and I remember being in a car again, like I said, at night, and I was trying to just sort of like separate myself from all of that strife and sadness. And I remember I closed my eyes and I saw this in my mind's eye, like the memory of this card. It just came to me and it clicked. It's like this mind over matter thing. I finally got it. And much later, I remember staring at this card from the Thoth deck for the longest time. It just gave me this sense of peace and like pure objectivity. Anyway, I love it. What do we have next? Seven of Cups. This is a fun card. Okay. So again, I think this is just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I wanted to do this video because, I don't know, I've read and listened to podcasts and watched videos on the Thoth, and maybe I'm missing something, but I don't really hear people talk about like how beautiful this card actually is. Everyone talks about how like the lotuses have become poisonous. And so they're lotuses. I thought they were tiger lilies, but no, I read that they're lotuses who have become poisoned, and they resemble tiger lilies, and they're filling these cups with poisonous nectar, and they're dripping this oozing slime. And but I think it's beautiful. So yeah, we have Venus and Scorpio. So the associated majors are the Empress and Death. It's a dangerous card. It's a dangerous place to be, but danger is often beautiful. Danger is often beautiful. For how else will it lure us in? Danger can be alluring. Usually is. It reminds me of that toxic friend. You know what I mean? You know, it represents seduction and addiction. Yeah, Venus and Scorpio. So it's desire and pleasure, which leads to toxic dependence. I remember reading that somewhere, and I was like, yeah, toxic dependence. Think of that toxic friend. and also ignoring your problems, which ignoring your problems can feel pretty good, but it's an illusion. So, but visually, you know what? This just sort of reminds me of beautiful rainy days in summer as a child. I don't know why. I think it's this contrast of this vibrant green against this like slaty blue. It's like raincoats and brightly colored umbrellas. You know what I mean? Like, let's look at some other representations here. It's so different here in coloring, but they're all so lovely. Ugh. So yeah, you know, avoid situations that are unclear, seem hazy, and, you know, admit that you might be addicted to something. This card also just sort of makes me think of one of my very best friends, because this is her birth card. So, you know, sometimes it's a simple association like that. Like, I'll draw a card and I'll be like, oh, you know, I should call so-and-so, or out of the blue, they'll call me. That happens to me with the Three of Swords with my mom, because this is her birth card. The Five of Discs, not a pleasant card. But I think there's just something beautiful about this. The way that these discs form this like inverted pentagram and these larger discs behind it. It very much represents like machinery, the mind, like being accosted by worry. It's quite unpleasant, yeah. But, you know, it's a reminder to use your intelligence to work your way out of these anxieties, which are usually in the mind. To me, I see like the cogs of the mind are stuck, okay? But there's something that I can do here. I'm the mechanic of my mental faculties here. The magician. I wonder if you guys can hear my stomach growling. All right. What do we have next? All right, the Nine of Wands. Again, not a negative card. I guess, you know, a lot of people probably think of this, right? In the Rider-Waite. But I think, again, that it's, you know, maybe a little underappreciated. I could be wrong about that. Maybe a lot of people appreciate this card. I think it's one of the best cards that you can possibly get, especially if you're trying to work on a creative project. So here, like, we've harnessed that fleeting Eight of Wands energy, and now we can plan projects with more self-esteem and stability. We have the courage to go through with our plans. It is the merging of the conscious and unconscious striving for what we want. And we have this double moon here, which is really cool. So we have, with the 9, we have Yesod and the moon in Sagittarius. And what a beautiful representation of the path of Sagittarius on the Tree of Life here, from Tiphereth to Yesod. And the wands here have become arrows. So the energy is more directed. It has a purpose. It has a clear target in mind. It's strength, which comes from the mind, the unconscious mind. Also, it's being inspired here by the moon, the unconscious, to create, the courage to take risks, to do things that we've always wanted to do. It's just one of the best cards. And I love these, like, this like indigo blue. Oh my God. It's just gorgeous. I love all three of them. All right. So I think we have just one card left. death. And yeah, die daily. I love that, by the way. Die daily. I don't think I have to say much about this, but this is probably the most beautiful death card, if not one of the most beautiful cards in the Thoth. Any deck. It's gorgeous. This card eases my anxieties, actually, when I'm going through anxiety, which has gotten a lot better over the years, but damn, do I love this card. So yeah, we have the skeleton. He's cutting the thread of life. And on his head here, he's wearing the crown of Osiris. So he represents Osiris here, god of death. Also, it's been said it's the Osiris, the secret male creative god, which is pretty cool. So you have these rising bubbles and these dancing figures. So alchemically, you probably know this as putrefaction. It's the chemical process which develops life, or like the final form of life. Rebirth, like death is creation. And again, to quote Crowley, from the Book of Thoth, I absolutely love this, so I'm going to read. The universe is change. Every change is the effect of an act of love. All acts of love contain pure joy. Die daily. Death is the apex of one curve of the snake, life. Behold all opposites as necessary complements and rejoice. And yeah, you should probably read the Book of Thoth because it is pure poetry. It's just, anyway, yeah, the beauty of the Thoth, those negative cards. Yeah, comment below with if you agree with any of my choices, or maybe you have some favorite negative cards that I didn't highlight here. Anyway, thank you for visiting me. Bye.